allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Jamie Toll and Damon McQuaid are unable to be here tonight. Is there any public comment from the board? Is there any public comment from the public? Come to them.
Hi, I'm Chris Letarte, 283 Whalum Road, Lunenburg. Obviously, Lunenburg, my bad. So I'm here tonight to let you all and everyone here and everyone at home watching know about a project I'm involved with. Some of you may know already, but I've been working with my neighbors. We've created a group called Friends of Wallace Park, and I've been working with the DPW, the Parks Commission, and the Lions Club on the revitalization of the Wallace Park Playground area located in the Whalum area of town and adjacent to the basketball courts. So this Thursday and Friday from 8 to 3, give or take, we will be starting the cleanup of the area, and if anyone is interested in volunteering, we would welcome the support. If you are available for even a portion of the day, please consider stopping by and lending a hand. There will be a check-in table for volunteers located in the basketball courts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what should people bring?
So I'm just thinking steel rakes and shovels and gloves because they're going to get dirty.
So you have a lot of barrels and things to put the stuff in, or?
Well, we have machines and trucks, so the people will be doing the edging and the stuff that the backhoe can't get to and whatnot. So a rake to pull brush and debris and stuff, or big snow type shovels or big wide steel shovels for sand and stuff. And then I think that's it. I mean, some of my neighbors might bring wheelbarrows and whatnot, but
Okay, so you do have wheelbarrows?
kind of whatever people bring, you know?
Okay, and the park department has approved this work?
Yeah, I have approval from the park department, and we met with Heather, and I think that's it, right? And Jack, and
Okay.
the Parks Commission. I went to one of those meetings too.
Okay, well, thank
So
you
we-
very much for
Yeah, no problem.
taking this initiative.
Yep.
Jack?
Jack wants to,
I think Chris is a little understated here as to what he's providing.
But the shorter my statement, the less I mess it up.
Yeah, he had a little apprehension coming here today. Didn't want to, which is the case with most people that volunteer and give their services. And, you know, it's sort of somewhat of a forgotten spot over there and had antiquated equipment. And as you know, we got a capital expenditure to put some equipment over there, in part. And Chris did, in fact, on a parallel track, organize the neighbors, got the interest stirring, and asked for our help, asked for the park's help, and it went on from there. So what we're going to do is move with the equipment a large amount of sand in the sand area, as Chris said, and the edging around the basketball court, and then eliminate, to the extent we can, the rubbish and the no dumping signs that have been pushed over and dumped upon in that wooded lot from the playground to Pierce Street. Open it up and do the best we can at the DPW. And they do have the permission of the park department. I just think Chris and those that come and help, but particularly Chris for taking the bull by the horns and getting this started, deserves a lot of credit. So I'm sure it'll be quite a different looking area by Friday. And then it's a little too late to put in the equipment. But Chris is also an artist and a carver, so he's going to have some of his things there perhaps. So we hope to engage an audience preschool, have some picnic tables, a nice wooded area, and perhaps some of his carvings. And it all started with this young man right here.
The dream is obviously a playground for the kids. There's a lot of kids in the area, and the wooded area. If it's cleaned out down to the ground and we make it safe, I could put about a quarter-mile track in there. There's 2 acres if you include the basketball court, the playground, and the woods. So
Well, that sounds great. Thank
it'll
you
be
so
great.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. I know it's not an easy thing to get something like this rolling.
Yeah, grassroots effort, and like Jack and I have discussed, nothing would have really happened if someone didn't really just kind of push it. So that's me, I guess.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll wait till we get to 7:10 for our 7:10 appointment. We have some ratification for the Charter Review Committee, Town Moderator appointment, Nancy Gray of 45 Rangeley Road, and School Committee appointment, Catherine Katie Adams of 45 Williams Drive. Chair will accept a motion to ratify those appointments.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. All right. We have a Mart van driver appointment, notice of appointment from the town manager.
I would make a motion to ratify the appointment of Leanne Normandin of 33 Cliffview Terrace to the position of Mart van driver.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So why don't we do minutes? Do we have any minutes?
I don't see any minutes in here,
No.
just warrants.
Okay. We can do the warrants then. Okay. We have accounts payable in the amount of $1,096,586.56. Accounts payable warrant in the amount of $110,234.99. Accounts payable in the amount of $156,734.15. Payroll in the amount of $768,294.50. Sure. Excuse me. We previously approved the amendment to the telecommunication lease for the,
Were we going to do action file issues under that line, or were we going to go back to that?
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
We had approved a lease of extension, First Amendment for the telecommunication lease for Verizon for the building here. We have the actual document before you tonight for signature. We don't need to vote to do it, we just need to sign it. And to let people know, contrary to what was on the agenda, we will not be going into executive session at the end of the meeting. That will be moved to October 10th. Okay, by the time Mr. Alonso gets up here, it'll be 7:10.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue. I'm here tonight as the chair of the Cable Advisory Committee to give you an update on that committee's activities and a vote that was taken at our last meeting on September 7th. I believe you were in receipt of 2 letters from our town council. One of them dated September 18th and one dated today. Do you have those?
Yes.
Don't we just have one?
The one from the 18th?
Number 18.
Okay,
From
the
the
18th.
18th.
All right, let's start with that one. So I'll just, I don't want to read the letter to you, so don't take this as that, but I will read it for people at home who are following along. So at our last meeting with Comcast, which is, we have been in the negotiation phase, we did not reach an agreement at that point. Lunenburg is seeking a 5% of the Comcast gross annual revenues as operational support budget for Lunenburg's local access programming, which is up from 2.5 from the current 10-year license. And we were looking for $240,000 in capital grants over the 10-year license, up from 115, again, in the last 10-year license. Comcast responded with an offer offering the 5%, but only $130,000 in the capital grant. And it should be noted that the current license expired on September, it says September 1st here, it's actually September 3rd. The Cable Committee at that meeting believes that the present demand is reasonable in being supported by the business plan that the Public Access Cable Committee vetted over the course of our tenure, which is now going on 2 years, and that it believes that Comcast's last offer was not sufficient. And because the license was expiring on September 3rd, the next step was to secure from the DTC, the Department of Telecommunications and Cable, an extra time, a 90-day extension to continue negotiations. Accordingly, our town council submitted to the DTC that request on Friday because we needed to file it within 14 days of the deadline. So since this meeting tonight fell outside of that, it is legal and right to protect our interests for the attorney to file it, which he did, and to continue negotiations with Comcast during those 90 days and see if we can reach an agreement on the terms of the remaining difference between Comcast and the town. If during the 90 days we remain unable to reach an agreement, before the question gets asked, what happens? So the town would have the option of either denying the license. That would trigger a required administrative hearing by the selectmen. That would be similar to an official hearing that would have witnesses and subpoena and discovery. At the conclusion of the hearing, the selectmen would have an issue to a written decision granting or denying the license at that point. And if at that point the decision remains to deny the license, then the further appeal of Comcast would be going to court. Now, again, that is to answer the suppositional question of what would happen if we don't reach a negotiation agreement in that time frame. Again, I don't think any entity wants to go that route, but these are the options we have, and I just wanted the board to be aware of them. Negotiations with Comcast may continue during all of the above steps, and we wish to continue to negotiate with them to see if we can come to an agreement. Now, since that letter came yesterday, we have an additional letter today that basically states from the DTC that extension has already been granted. So there is while there was the potential for some official action by the Board of Selectmen tonight, that is no longer necessary, so this becomes more of an informational period, or an informational section. But it is being extended, and Comcast is being notified of that. We don't feel that they will appeal that DTC decision. It would really make no sense for them to do it, although they have the ability to do it. So where we stand right now is that gap between what they are offering and what we are asking. Again, during our 2-year tenure on this committee, we have taken pains to do surveys of cable subscribers. We've done surveys of the town. We've worked very diligently with the Public Access Cable Committee in having them build the business plan that I have distributed to you tonight that was submitted to Comcast. That itself has been edited down. When that first business plan came out that talks about the 10-year, remember we're talking about a 10-year license. So the 10-year focus and 10-year plan of the town as far as public access cable goes, it initially came in with a $340,000 capital requirement, and we pared down, or we had them, not the Cable Access Committee, but we asked PAC to pare that down And they took 100,000 out of that, which, took away from some expenditures they were going to use and how they were going to fund a mobile unit, how they were going to fund the moving of this studio if this, in the 10-year period, since there's a building reuse plan or impetus in town, it may need to move out of this building to somewhere else. We are asking for an educational channel. Currently, we're allowed 3 channels by statute, so there's public, it's called PEG, public access, educational, and government. So 20 years ago, we started with a government channel. 10 years ago, we added public access channel. And now that we have the new school, we want to add the educational channel. It's been requested by members of the school to use for their purposes, for educational purposes. So that would require some additional equipment to run that station and the programming of that station. I am here to answer any questions anybody might have of me, of this process, of where we are, and any explanations I can give, I'd be more than happy to offer.
Questions from the board?
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Chair. In the September 18th KP Law letter,
Yep.
it says that the Cable Committee believes that its present demand is reasonable, bringing only a modest increase in current subscriber rates. What is that modest increase?
Sure. So the current, as stated in item number 1 of that letter, that we are seeking 5% of the gross annual revenues up from 2.5. So let's take them in 2 portions. So that currently, that 2.5, and I've given you this sheet. That's the last page of the business plan. It's actually not part of the business plan, but it was copied all at once. So if you look at that, at the very bottom where it says the franchise fee, so currently, first of all, the franchise fee is a percentage of the gross annual revenue from cable operations that are garnered from Lunenburg subscribers. So that's what it comes down to. It doesn't include internet, it doesn't include anything, just cable-related revenue from Lunenburg only, because this is a Lunenburg access channel.
And
that's how it gets funded.
only from the Comcast subscribers.
Right,
Right.
right. Because that's what the channel is broadcast on. It doesn't get broadcast to any
So
other
when
way.
you add an educational channel, just the Comcast subscribers are going to pay for that.
Yes.
Yes, any public access in town will be funded through the subscribers.
Only through
yes.
Comcast
Yep.
subscribers.
So that is currently $2.60, approximately. This is approximate because, again, as subscribership goes up or down, this number will go up and down. But it is approximately $2.60 a month per subscriber. And by going to 5%, assuming, again, linearity, which is pretty accurate, it would go to $5.20 a month per subscriber. So it would be raised by $2.60 per subscriber.
Now, what about the doubling of the capital request? That doesn't affect
No,
the
that's,
subscriber?
well, I'm just doing one at a time. So this is the franchise fee. The second part is the capital that we're asking $240,000, and that's in the upper part of that same page.
Okay.
So currently, just to go through the math, in the current license, we ask for $115,000 over the 10-year period. If you divide that by 10 years, that's $11,500 a year. Divided by 12 months, comes out to about $905 a month. Divided by 3,200 subscribers, it comes out to 28 cents per subscriber per month for the capital. What we are asking is the number below at 240, which would raise that 28 cents to 62 cents. So we would be raising it approximately 34 cents a month.
So you're doubling both of those things. So you're doubling the fee Comcast subscribers are going to pay a month
for this portion.
Yes.
from both portions.
Yes.
Yes. But it's a 10-year license, so this is the first increase in 10 years.
Yes, and this is to fund the capital, the business plan that the PAC has projected, given the needs of PAC. Now, remember that we are still, other towns and certainly cities have built up their studios much, much quicker. So we've only added 1 studio per, and now we're building up our final pieces of locations per se. So we have been asked for many years to have a mobile unit, for instance.
Well, can the town chip in something? Because it doesn't
Sure.
seem fair to me that Comcast subscribers should foot the bill.
Well, but
Personally.
this is for Comcast programming. It doesn't get broadcast
But
anywhere
the
else.
educational programming,
It doesn't-
you're looking for that for the
It's
schools.
It's only broadcast
Still
on the
only on
channels.
broadcast on
We can
cable.
try to put it together and publish them on YouTube.
Well, you're saying you want it for the schools, so you're looking specifically to utilize it in the schools. Therefore, you're going to have to figure out some way to get it to the schools, or there's no point.
Well, the schools have
Bring it.
cable.
All right, so the school,
But also again, there's 3,200 subscribers in town and there's,
10,000
how many-
people, right?
Right, but how many homes? So it's how many units? Again, I don't know the exact housing units. I know homes, there's like 3,600.
It feels
But
like
I don't know
It feels
if,
like a
you know.
tax on Comcast subscribers to me.
Well,
It's the cost
funding-
of services.
Yeah,
I don't see it as a tax, I see it as the cost of services.
But
If
the
it-
Comcast subscribers are footing the whole bill for the educational, the public access, for everything.
Because it's the Comcast subscribers who benefit from that. It's a cable access service, so it's the services provided. People that don't have cable don't have access to that programming. We now have it on, some of the programming on YouTube, so it does make it available. Now, whether or not there's a cost perspective that we can do for that, or we can look at that, but we went through the process of a public survey as well as a public hearing, and we heard overwhelmingly that there's a need for expanded programming and a need for a mobile unit so that we can do that expanded programming. And the PAC has done extensive work to determine what their needs are over a 10-year period. And that's the thing to remember, is that this isn't an increase over a 2-year period. This is an increase over a 10-year period. And our attorney has even indicated that this business plan that PAC did is one of the best that he's seen, and that we have complete justification within the business plan to justify these rates.
Well, I just think it's unfair that the Comcast subscribers are footing the bill for the educational programming, and it's just another way to tax people.
To be clear, they're not footing the bill for the educational programming. If you look at the total budget, and it's a very comprehensive budget, there's staff associated, there's a mobile unit associated, there's a new studio proposed, so it's not just the educational channel, just to be very clear,
Right.
that's not the majority of the cost. In fact, it's a very small percentage
And how were the surveys conducted?
through SurveyMonkey.
And, just last week at the Pancake Breakfast, I had some senior citizens railing against me for us just using SurveyMonkey, because many people don't go to the website and don't go to SurveyMonkey, people without computers. So you're leaving out, she was so upset about
They were
getting the bags.
There were written surveys
in the town
available
hall,
at multiple town
in
buildings.
multiple town buildings. There were written surveys available.
And we had the public
Many of the seniors filled them out.
Right.
Oh, so people put their names down?
They put their age brackets.
Yep.
So many of the seniors filled them out.
Yep.
So, all we can
funding-
do is present the surveys and present the information. And if people have questions or concerns, but we had it on the scroll, we had it at the public buildings, we announced it at this meeting, Tom announced it at this meeting, so I don't know what else to do other than to make it available. But I do know that there were surveys available at the senior center. They were available at the senior center.
Now, as for funding of public access channels, that's not Lunenburg. That's the way the statute is written. Like
Exactly.
anybody's public access, whether it's Leominster or Fitchburg or Townsend or Shirley or anybody, that's the way that public access cables are funded, is through this same mechanism. This mechanism is not new or unique to Lunenburg. This is the way any municipality negotiates, and these are the only things that they have.
So there aren't any municipalities that kick money into that, you don't think?
Well, I don't know. That I don't
you
know.
don't
I'm
know.
just saying that, are there other ways to fund it? Sure. I mean, if you want to take general fund money, but I would believe that would give a stronger, a bigger push, because people who are going to be paying for it that don't have cable are going to say, I'm funding this. But certainly you could fund it any way you want.
It's similar, to me, it's similar to the pay-as-you-throw program. The people that use it pay for the bags, and yes, there's a portion of the recycling program that is paid for out of the taxes. It's the same type of situation. The users of cable are paying for the service.
But
And yes, there is a small benefit to all town residents. You're correct.
But I think when you're going to the educational channel and the mobile unit, I don't, as a Comcast subscriber, I don't need either one of those, and so I'm paying for it for the benefit of the town.
Well, I understand the educational component. However, I would say that, educational component, I mean, we can all learn regardless of what age. And just to be clear, that it's not just, I don't believe it will just be student focused. There may be educational components that are associated with adults.
That's the way you-
And no, this is not just for the schools. This is educational on a very broad spectrum. So there will be educational programming available to a multitude of ages, I envision, as well as the mobile unit will allow for capturing things like the band concert, different town events, the Stillman Fair, for example. So to say that you won't benefit, I question that, because I think everyone will benefit from that.
I will say that when we looked at the numbers, that among the country and the Commonwealth, that people are moving away from cable and they're going to internet streaming video services, Lunenburg over this 10-year period actually had an increase of subscribership. And if you go, you all know when you meet people, how many people that talk to you about seeing this program, seeing this meeting or other meetings or other programming that's on TV, whether it's, the baseball talk ones or the cooking shows or the exercise shows. It really is a very strongly supported aspect of town in Lunenburg, of watching the public access channels. And that's where, PAC over the last 10 years has really done an incredible job. At the public hearing, the director of PAC showed the percentage of programming that we've done and how that's increased over time, and the number of demands that we get for, can you put this show on, can you put this on, and can you put this town event on, homecoming's coming up soon, can you do these? Well, we don't have a mobile unit. We have some handheld things, but it's not a mobile unit. We can't do it live.
And nor do we have
multiple
staff.
Meetings live, so sometimes there's 2 meetings. We're trying to address these things that people have asked us about, and I don't want to, the educational access is one component, but as Mrs. Bertram said, the mobile unit, the other studio, the rental space that we probably will wind up having to pay to have a studio, regardless of where it is, has all been factored into this. And, all of it is together. It's not just one thing that comes to these totals. I encourage you to read the business plan. I'm sorry that I just handed it out tonight, but.
Yeah, I'd like to read it.
Any other comments? Thank you.
So we will continue with this, and as things progress, I will come back to you and report further. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to just email them directly, and I will answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
7:28, we'll start our 7:15 with Lunenburg Water Commissioners.
Good evening. Fran McNamara, Lunenburg Water District Superintendent. Mark Bursch, Chairman of the Board. Also present out back is Commissioner Mark Flagg. We're here to discuss some issues, apparently. Lancaster permit. I did watch one of your last meetings, and I just want to make it clear that the whole Lancaster expansion was taken under the Lunenburg as the first priority. We would never do anything that would impact the water rights to the town of Lunenburg. Everything we did for Lancaster, the intent was to generate significant revenue to offset the cost needed to improve infrastructure, update tanks, wells, and that kind of thing. We're looking at without Lancaster, we're looking at a significant increase in the water rates. What that number is, we don't know, but it's going to be a large number. So the whole goal was for the benefit of the water district customers. So that was the main intent of the whole thing.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. I completely understand that, but my concern is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could absolutely be wrong, My understanding is that a business entity is not subject to water restrictions. Is that correct?
For the core function of the business, that is correct. So
Okay.
if for example, a car wash,
Yeah.
yes, we cannot stop the car wash because you're not going to cut their taxes, the bank's not going to stop their loans from being due. So we cannot impact the business by restricting the water, but we can impact them of watering the grass out front and the wasteful uses of the water. So you are partly correct.
Okay, if I remember correctly, the Lancaster expansion included, and I can't honestly remember, but I think it included a potential hospital, is that correct?
Yep.
As well as a hotel.
Correct.
And, I can't remember what the other uses were. Well, obviously, those two uses are great users of water. I mean, they use an incredible volume of water just by their sheer nature of their business. My concern, and the reason I recommended we didn't sign the letter of support for the grant for Lancaster, is because my concern is we're already seeing water restrictions, and I do understand it's because of our water withdrawal permit, and DEP is actually, rather than increasing it, they're looking at lowering it, and I'm hoping you can explain that a little bit.
Sure.
But my concern is that if our water withdrawal permit is lowered, and we're now selling, 250,000 gallons to Lancaster, obviously our water volume usage as a community is going to go up because Lancaster is now drawing on Lunenburg's water. So isn't that increase in water usage going to impact the restrictions that are on Lunenburg residents?
No.
Okay.
No, it's two separate things.
Okay.
So the current permit we have has expired, and we're in the process of renewing it. It's a state thing, so it could be 5 years from now. Who really knows? So the idea is you continue on the permit that you recently had. So our permit currently is for 540,000 gallons per day.
Okay.
That is the average day for the year. So you take the total amount of water we pumped divided by 365 and there's your number. So last year it was 547,000. So we exceeded it by 7,000 gallons per day. That mostly, 100% due because it was such a dry year. People have to realize that the new environmental regulations coming down the road, you're not going to be able to have green grass like you have now. There's going to be significant restrictions on what you can use the water for, and that's what people tried to do. They were trying to keep their grass green, and that's the main reason that we saw the exceed of the permit. So on the Lancaster side, so on our permit, when we exceeded that actually it's not even the 547, we use the residential usage. Everybody in Lunenburg has a rate structure and rate classification, let's say. So commercial is one, municipal is another, residential, industrial, which we don't have any. So they're all broken down. So everybody that's a residential, that total number comes up. So we take how many people are residential and then we divide it out. And in our permit, you're considered conservative if you're 65 gallons per person or less. And in Lunenburg, we exceeded the 65 gallons per capita. That's the word they use. So we exceeded that. That flagged our permit to kick into a secondary more restrictive usage, which people use more than they should have, so it's kind of a reactionary thing.
Okay, so that's on the residential portion only. That doesn't take into account the commercial or the business.
That is correct. The commercial, the commercial usage is pretty steady. It doesn't really fluctuate. Like a car wash, I keep mentioning the car wash. They are perfect for a water system. They use very little water during the summertime and a significant amount of water during the wintertime. That is perfect for us. Winters, no one's using any water, so it works out perfect.
Okay.
Okay,
so if we exceeded our permit, between all of the uses combined, we exceeded our gallons per day.
Correct.
How do we sell 240,000 gallons?
To Lancaster.
100
Yeah.
million gallons.
Well, okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's 100 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
100
But
million.
it's 250,000 a day.
I'm sorry, 250,000 a day.
However,
I'm
it
sorry.
also says Lancaster can use more or less than that amount.
Okay, so.
That was their average. The the anticipated average was 250,000. Those are Title V numbers. As we all know, Title V numbers are not realistic what true usage
But it
is.
says they can use more or less.
Okay.
So, but go to
back to the
answer
question. Go back to the
Okay.
question about the permit.
Okay, so the way the new permit's gonna be written up is Lunenburg's now, the new withdrawal, yearly average will be 505,000. And that was based on historical usage. So I met the Department of Conservation and Recreation, they're the ones that set all this up. They do all the legwork on how this happens, and then it gets past DP. So I sat down with the person from the DCR, and we went through Lunenburg's numbers. I could not argue any of the numbers. They were true, actual numbers. And our average was 505,000. So there was nothing for me to argue with. That's what we used.
Over what period of years?
That was, I think it was 4 years, 2010 to 2015.
So 5 years.
I could be wrong on the dates, but it
Okay.
didn't include last year. Because
Okay.
this meeting took place last summer. So
Okay.
this has been going on for
So I guess
quite a while.
why are you lamenting that?
Because it's lower than the 547.
Yeah, it's lower than the 5, then it's
last
right.
year.
Right. We're going down from 540 to 505.
Right, but
So
I
that's
think the
good, we're
fi-
saving water.
Well, it's good,
as long
except
as the
we're
people
already facing
restrict, yeah.
restrictions.
Yeah.
So that means 40,000 average, 47,000 gallons a day less somebody will be using in town. So
But-
that's part of what
Yeah,
would happen.
But it's a good number. I mean, it's a real historic
It's a realistic
other than
number.
last year. So I
But
don't
how do
see
we
an
factor
issue.
in the 250 now?
Okay,
to
so in that
Lancaster?
permit, there's the 505,000. I submitted the anticipated usage for Lancaster, which is the one that you're mentioning, the hotels and the restaurants and all that. And in that, they had the 250,000. And DEP wanted to use the Title V number, so they were perfectly happy with that number. So they're going to do a separate segment of our permit, and let's say Lancaster falls apart and nothing happens, that will never be activated. If Lancaster happens, then it becomes activated. They don't want to just come and stick it into Lunenburg. Now Lunenburg's permit's
Okay.
790.
But it would be an increase specifically for that use.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Correct.
So it wouldn't affect the 505 for Lunenburg
That is correct.
residents.
Right.
DEP would approve a limited increase specifically for the Lancaster usage.
Exactly, right.
Got it.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Right, and I had a meeting with DEP in Lancaster, every division of DEP was at a meeting to talk about the Lancaster expansion, and I thought they were going to be against the expansion, but they're actually 100% in favor of it. The hard part was the intermunicipal agreement part. They have no idea how they're going to write that up or who's going to regulate.
Okay.
That's going to be
There aren't very many municipal agreements, intermunicipal agreements for water.
There are many of them, but none of them, if we were feeding the town of Lancaster to their water system, so our water was mixing with Lancaster water, then they'd be straightforward. But this is the town of Lancaster, that is fed solely from Lunenburg Water District. There's a lot of sampling requirements, like a chlorine byproducts. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with the water system. And where it's in Lancaster, it's really Lancaster's, but how do you put it on Lancaster's sampling plan for tank monitoring and all the other sampling stuff when it's 100% Lunenburg's water? So they were having a hard time of how to do this thing.
But I actually have a question about that. I thought way back when you were advertising this, you said you were going to look for water in Lancaster and try to get water, and I don't see anything referring to that in this.
Well, that was mostly the district expansion. That was the benefit of the district expansion. If we expanded the water district into Lancaster, everything within that boundary was the water rights of Lunenburg.
Not Lunenburg, the Lunenburg Water District.
Yeah, the water district, right. So, and we had proven potential of several sites. So that's where most of that came. So the original plan was with the district expansion was that we would feed Lancaster temporarily from Lunenburg sources and then develop a well, and then they would feed themselves.
So they're not interested in developing any wells at this point?
Well, because
see, everybody's different. I mean, just look at Lunenburg Water District. We bought water from Leominster. It took a while, but then they smartened up and put in their own wells and controlled their own destiny and the costs. And I think this is what's going to happen with Lancaster. They're going to see how much they pay in Lunenburg, and then they're going to do their own
So
well.
I have a question. When you bought water from Leominster, did you pay the same rates as Leominster users, or did you pay more?
That was way before my time. I'm not sure. That was 1960.
I assume it was probably more because we pay more
In sewer.
for sewer than
We do.
the average Leominster.
So, you know, and that's another thing. I don't understand why Lancaster residents are going to pay the same as Lunenburg residents.
Well-
That was another part that was advertised way back when you were trying to sell this to everybody, that Lancaster residents would pay more, therefore it would be more beneficial. And that's not in this, they're just paying the same.
In that, you're on the memorandum of understanding?
Yeah, that's all we have.
Okay. Yeah, that's all there is, really, at this point. In that is assuming that there's a meter at the line and Lunenburg is doing nothing. That's the assumption.
Still, you know, before you advertised that you were going to, you know, we pay more to Leominster than Leominster residents pay for sewer. So
Right.
it's common that you charge more to other communities. And in this case, you're saying, no, we're going to give it to you for the same price.
I believe that, didn't it say a rate not less than Lunenburg? Because we haven't really discussed the actual water.
Well, but back in number 5, it says, "The parties acknowledge that the above terms are agreeable and represent the intentions of the parties." So you're saying this stuff that, yep, we agree to this. This is what we're going to do.
It does say at a rate equal to the rate the
Okay,
district
okay.
charges its residents.
All right, and under that assumption, there's the rates that they charge themselves, because the way that was written up, Lancaster was going to do the billing to those customers.
Yeah, but they're just paying you the same as if it was a Lunenburg resident.
Right,
But
but they're
the
going to
point-
charge above that because they have to pay for their own maintenance costs.
Right, but the point of that is that the rate, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the point the superintendent's trying to make is that the rate that Lunenburg ratepayers pay covers the salary of the staff and the office, and it covers all of the operation of the district. Lancaster would be assuming those costs. So they would pay the same rate as Lunenburg users, but yet they would have to pay an additional rate on top of that, because although we're just charging that to Lancaster's going to have to do the billing, they're going to have to do all the maintenance, they're going to have to do, so they're going to have to increase that cost to the end users.
So if you compare that to Leominster maintains the whole thing. They do all the billing, they do the whole.
So basically, they're paying the same rate.
They don't do the billing for the Lunenburg sewer.
I don't know
talking
about the
about
sewer, I know the water.
No.
You're talking about Leominster water that
Yeah,
comes in
Leominster
Lunenburg.
water, there's quite
What
a
I'm
few.
saying, right.
There's quite a few Leominster customers.
But what, that may be, but the way it was advertised was Lunenburg was going to get more money per cubic whatever of water from Lancaster than they were from the Lunenburg people, and so that made it more beneficial. And it sounds like that's not the case.
That is the case, so I understand where you were coming from, Paula. The rate that the Lunenburg payers pay covers all the overhead
Yep,
expenses.
I understand, but it's
Okay,
not what was advertised.
So Lancaster is not covering any of those expenses. They don't have to, so paying the same rate, we are actually going to make more per cubic foot of water that we sell to Lancaster than we sell when we sell it to a Lunenburg.
Because there's no overhead associated with it.
Exactly.
So the memorandum of agreement we have is signed by the 2 members of the Board of Selectmen of Lancaster. Was it signed by the Water Department?
Yes,
This is-
they signed it.
This is in effect.
It is in effect, but it's just there's nothing binding in that. There were some issues that the board had concerns with. I'm not sure which ones they were, I actually wasn't at that meeting, but there's nothing binding, and we would address those in the intermunicipal agreement, which it's fully planned that you guys, we're gonna have the board involved with the design of
Do you
that.
have any idea of timing of moving forward with that? Is it on Lancaster's timetable at the moment?
Yes, this all started and it looked like it was moving ahead, and then it's pretty much been a year where it's just been sitting there, it hasn't done a thing. And then this came up again where they were looking to have this signed just to get it moving.
Just to have the letter signed.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So-
so as of now, nothing's going for, I don't
So
know.
I just want to comment on the letter. The reason that I brought up not signing the letter and that I recommended against was because I thought it would impact our water withdrawal permit. I'm hearing now from the Water Commission that it will not. And in fact, this board is talking about economic development and talking about ways to bring business to Lunenburg. And quite frankly, having a hotel and restaurants in proximity to Lunenburg would potentially benefit our economic development plan. And if it doesn't adversely impact Lunenburg residents, and based on what I've heard tonight, I don't think that it will, I would not be opposed to signing the letter.
So my question is that when it becomes the new permit with the Lancaster adder, if Lancaster does tie in and we actually have the intermunicipal agreement, does it become one permit at that point, or does the state look at 250 for them and then we still have to do the 504, 505 standard? Or are they now going to be, any residential use there gets tied into our whole permit at the 700 and something thousand?
No, that's a
Good question.
And you probably don't have an answer because DEP probably hasn't told you that, but.
My understanding is that it would be still a separate.
You'd think
piece
you'd
of
want it to
equipment.
be separate.
I would
Because
think it would
They
be,
would want to know the usage that we have here versus the usage that they have there.
But the residential is a good question. Does the residential
See,
get coupled in?
this is where, depending how DEP writes it up, every year I have to do a annual statistic report. It's a huge thing. I have to put down how much, like the residential, how much commercial, every customer. So that is specific to Lunenburg. So we'll have to see how this is written up. If it's written up that this is Lancaster, then Lancaster's going to have to do it. It'll be under their permit, their process. So I don't know how to answer that.
And I
It
assume
could be.
you'll be having a meter at the town line so you can actually track the usage. It could work both ways. If they ended up using less residential water so it's the apartments, if they had apartments, they tend to use less water than a single-family house. It could help, but we don't know what that standard is. I mean, clearly, it'd be good to have them separated.
Well, and one question that I would have is, I'm assuming that you would have the new permit from DEP before this was able to move ahead.
Yes.
Kind of sounds that way, yeah.
Yes. That's
Okay.
why.
Because you have to have that additional increment.
Right.
Okay,
So
so-
that was the purpose of that meeting I had with DEP, was because I didn't know if they were going to be would support this thing. If they weren't going to support it, this deal was dead. Because there's
Okay.
no way we weren't going to impact the Lunenburg customers by doing it with Lancaster.
Okay, okay.
So the other part, and I appreciate you responding to my question about the pool filling question.
Yep.
Which several different people asked me that over the years, and it's like, this finally was the opportunity to ask the question. This year, they've used 2 million gallons. The question I have is that going forward, in order to not trigger the first red flag to DEP about residential, of use, could you reduce the pool filling, selling of water so that we stay below our average permit? So like last year, could you have proactively tried to say, all right, we want residents to reduce their usage, and we also want them to reduce the usage? Because I understand there's an economic benefit to the water district to selling the water, but at the same time, residential versus pool.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, yes, I think if we could go back in time, I think that would have been the correct action to take, would be to stop the pool withdrawals. In the future, let's say some new development's going to come into town that's going to impact that average day, then we can eliminate the pools and use that water for the new customers.
If we had a large development, does DEP allow you to change your permit to recognize the huge development increase?
They do allow it. It's not easy.
Okay.
You have to do, it's based on the Title V stuff, you do a submittal, and as long as there's water available that can be pumped, then they support it.
Well, that raises
they
an
support
interesting
it, but-
question. So, if we say we had a big development come in, or we're talking about economic development in Lunenburg, and we're looking at, commercial or retail space, if we're already exceeding, last year we exceeded our permit, is there water available without getting a new permit?
I think we're right at the historical. They're pushing for everybody to do more restrictions. So I don't think they don't want to give any extra. They want everybody to start cutting back. And I think if we did a project and actually this came up during those meetings, we submitted what the future project, which really there is no project for Lunenburg really to submit. But if we did have this huge project, I could have submitted it and we would have had that number with the 505 above that.
So if we had a Lancaster development that needed 250,000 gallons a day on average, we could go to DEP and say, we're going to do the same thing Lancaster needed, but here, we need to increase our permit by that amount.
But I guess that's my question, because one of the things that's come up so far, I mean, we've only talked about economic development very briefly, but one of the things that came up and was presented was the need for infrastructure. Well, obviously, water is a critical component of that infrastructure. So if we did do an initiative for, say, a restaurant or a retail, I don't know, I mean, something that uses a lot of water, what would the process be for the water district to approve it?
We've modified our permits in the past when we put the Keating well in line. That was a modification of the permit, so you just have to go through the proper process.
Okay.
And if it's a justified, legitimate number, and they use Title V as the number, then they do the modifications.
How long does that take generally?
I'm not sure. It could be 3 months.
Okay.
Okay,
so, but it's not years.
It's not years.
It's not years. No, the
Okay.
permits usually renew every 5 years.
Okay.
Usually.
Okay, because when we talk about building reuse and economic development, and, I mean, this is an important part of that discussion.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
thank you for giving us a sort of move to some of the other things we have on our agenda, which is next steps for economic development. And I would assume that you would be willing to attend some of those meetings as we move forward.
Whatever you need, we'll be happy to. Well, one of the benefit sides of the Lancaster is the extension of the water main towards the Leominster line, and then, which is Keating's land. I'm not sure what's available there for development.
Right, but that's
Going
our
by the
industrial
Powells and-
area. Right.
So there is a side benefit to it, too.
Right.
So I have two last questions. One, what is the water district doing to help people conserve on water?
Did the toilets.
Yeah, well, was that 2 years ago? We did a toilet replacement program where we give a rebate.
Leak detection.
Yeah, we do a lot of leak detection, which doesn't really help the conservation side on the people.
But it does help.
But it
It does
does,
save
if
water.
it's
we
leaking, yeah.
find a lot of leak. Actually, Jamie Tolles, he had a big leak in his driveway, but we didn't find that. I don't know if someone found it. But we do find a lot of leaks that are not visible, and the special leak detector picks it up and
Now,
hears
you
it
must send out bills, quarterly?
quarterly, correct?
Wouldn't it be great to throw in some educational information on just simple tips people can do?
Well, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't know about you, when you get your mail and get your Unitil bill or whatever, I kind of just dump it out and just take the bill. I don't ever look at that. DEP doesn't like the stuffers, because that's what most people do. They just pull out the stuff and just grab the bill, so.
So is there some other way you could reach out to people?
Maybe something on the public access channel?
Maybe.
Through an education?
An educational show on the public access channel?
So the other question is, are you able to do any analysis of the number of people that are on the census in the home versus their usage, and look at that average, if it's 65 per person?
I use the census numbers to come up with that 65.
Okay.
It's 2.66 average people per household. So that's what I use. I have to do this special spreadsheet of all the multi-unit buildings, and I come with how many of those are, and then it's 2.66 is the multiplier, and then that divides into the...
So, but the question is, are you able to look at a particular house and say, this house seems to be using a lot of water?
I don't know if we could do that. We go through every bill and see.
You know how much water everybody's using, right?
Yes, yeah, we keep a history forever.
I know that California and other places will actually fine people for using too much water. We're not at that point at the moment, but that may be the case. I know the sewer department allows people to put on irrigation meters so that they don't get charged for the irrigation because it's not going into the sewer.
Right.
But that's another indication of extra water that somebody's using that might go into saving it for the rest of the people.
Okay,
So-
well, one of the conservation measures that DEP likes to see is the elimination of that second meter. Because if people are paying extra money, then
They won't put
they're
it
not going
on.
to use it.
They won't
So
put it on.
That's one of their methods, although
City of Boston allows people to do that too, so we're not going to be running your organization, but those are some of the thoughts. And then the last question I have is, the town approved about $5 million in an override in order to approve the pavement management for the town.
Yep.
And I know you have a capital plan for replacing pipes, and I want to just make sure that, I know you already talked, but I want to make sure that you talk with the DPW so that we don't pave a street and you don't come and have to replace those pipes.
Right. One of the street, Maple Parkway, we're actually going to begin working on that very soon. We're going to do that in-house, our own staff, it's going to be very difficult for us, but it's mostly money. I mean, we can't afford to do it if we paid to do them all. One other one I just mentioned at the Jack yesterday is on White Street. Over the last couple of years, we've never had broken mains on White Street. I mean, I've been here 32 years, I never had any, and all of a sudden now, the last few years, we've had one or two a year. And the last one we had is right near Pearl Brook. It's getting ready. The next one's going to be like under the culvert. We can't fix that. That would be impossible for us to do it. And I don't know how even full contractor, huge equipment, I don't know how they do it with the brook and everything. So I brought it up to the board. We're trying to do a rapid something to get this thing fixed before winter. And White Street is another street on the paving plan for next year, so that's why our goal is to get it done now, and just to get that one little section of White Street. And the good thing is, most of it will be off the road anyway, so we won't impact any of the road, but we still want to do it before they do pave the road.
It's weird, is there something else going on White Street? I mean, that
Yeah, the
seems
pipe,
like it's more than coincidence.
the pipe where it is, it's in a wet area, so it's a transite pipe, so it's kind of like a cement pipe. And where it's wet, you can actually just take your hand and wipe the pipe off. Where it's wet, it's really probably the poorest pipe I've ever seen, of that style. So we want to just get rid of the section where it's wet. But anyway, yeah, I got the whole plan, the payment plan. I mean,
So you are communicating and coordinating?
Oh, yes. If you gave me $1 million, I'd love doing water main. I love doing stuff. So I would do a lot of streets on that payment plan if I had the money to do it. But yes, nothing on that plan we have any intentions of putting water.
Okay, because just so that you're aware, did we vote it, the 5 years? So roads are prohibited from reopening for 5 years unless there's an emergency. So it's important that we coordinate any work that you guys are doing with the pavement management.
Yeah, and the good thing, if we do get this main replaced on White Street, that's a good thing, because if it breaks, we dig up the road.
Okay.
We don't like digging up a new road either, so.
I have a couple more questions. In your item 3 about permitting, design, and construction, it says the parties are going to work cooperatively to permit, design, and construct the infrastructure improvements needed to achieve the purposes of this memorandum, and they agree to allocate the costs of such permitting, design, and construction in a fair and equitable manner.
That is not a good statement. That is not true. That statement, we are not paying a dime for any of that.
Well, I thought that's what you said.
I thought that was the plan too.
We're not paying. There was, like I said, there was several sections that the board had issues with, and I'm not sure which ones they were, but I gave them a list of things that I thought should be taken out, and where it's a non-binding agreement, we didn't.
So your definition of fair and equitable may be different than Lancaster's definition of fair and equitable.
Yes, we are not paying a dime for any part of that, so.
So when the actual agreement is written, it will be written so that statement is not included?
Yep, you'll see it. You guys will be part of it.
Okay.
There's positive aspects in that one statement about design. We want to be involved in the design.
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
So that's why that.
Yeah, the last one,
And again,
everything's got to be
It's a non-binding.
Right.
And it
Yeah.
does. How many days on that?
How many days?
How many
I think it
days?
expires in 90 days. I think it's already expired.
Yeah, so it's going to expire before the end of the year anyway.
Okay. And one more thing. where it says, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this memorandum of understanding, any and all payments which any party is required to make shall be subject to appropriation by the paying party's legislative body or other available funds. So it's like, what if the town of Lancaster says, no, we're not going to pay? You know, that feels like
I think
dangerous
that's
thing.
why that was put in there, to make it that they have to pay.
But if it's subject to appropriation, that actually means that
Yeah.
Actually, almost any municipal contract is required to that because you can have a contract for Verizon and we have the right to not appropriate the money and therefore the contracts get null and void, which basically says we're going to stop supplying water. How that would actually happen once you've got a hospital or a hotel is another question, but
that's just that's legally,
yeah, standard is what I'm hearing.
okay.
any other
So,
questions?
the only other question I have is as to the letter. I think we should put that on one of our near agendas to take that back up again.
That letter is
Was-
no longer necessary, I believe, because the Mass Works grant was due shortly after that meeting. the
Okay.
initial meeting.
Okay,
The next time it comes up.
okay.
I think that's the key to their whole expansion. If they don't get that grant, then I think it's dead.
The town
So,
can't pay for it without the grant.
Right.
Okay, I would be curious to see if we can send a letter of support after the deadline.
I can look into it.
Because
They
I
were
would think that,
Plus that there was-
I would think that you can put a letter of support in after. So I would
Depends on
just,
the
it depends on the
application process.
application, but if we could check that, and if so, if we could put it on our next week's agenda.
Anything else for the water commissioners?
I guess, though, before I would sign that letter, I would like a different memorandum of understanding, because
Well-
there's some stuff that's really,
Well, I don't know that the memorandum of it is in effect. I mean, and we
Technically,
can talk
if-
about that
if
at the,
This said May 2016, if it was good for 90 days, we're well past that. So
It's,
technically is no memorandum.
no memorandum right
okay,
now.
all right.
So,
the basic concept of having that sign was just that we were still interested.
Still talking.
That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not quite a prenuptial agreement.
Not quite.
Solid.
Well, thank you for coming
thank
in.
you for coming in, and
Yep.
thank you for the explanation.
So number 1 on old business, Board of Selectmen goals, October 10th, boards and committees workshop agenda.
So this item is on the agenda just to get more definition of what the board's expectations for that workshop are.
Yeah, and I actually think the people that we've invited really need more information.
Correct. I asked Elaine to send out just to save the date, so that to have some notice of that meeting, but with follow-up information to come. So maybe possible topics that we'd ask them to come prepared to discuss would be, what have they done in the last year? What are their goals for this upcoming year? And in what ways can we work together on different topics?
Just to follow up on that, one of the things, we did have one workshop on August 16th of 2016 that we talked about ways to communicate and ways to increase membership on committees, and there were a lot of ideas talked about then by various individuals about the need for more expansion of the talent bank form to give a better window into what various committees do to really try to solicit applicants. And I had taken some notes about a template, and I did finally do it. So I can give these to you, and I can send it to you electronically, but it may be something we want to do. And there's a sample underneath there that is, it really was, rather than the standard talent bank form, having the talent bank, but also making available information about every commission. How often do they meet? What's the average meeting time? How many hours are needed outside of meetings? What kind of education and training should they be looking at? What skills and qualifications? What do they do? So I kind of came up with, based on that meeting, what people suggested, and the suggestion at that workshop was to send it out to various departments to complete. So I've created this fillable form that you may or may not want to use, but it may be something we want to float by the various people coming and saying, is this what you had in mind? So it may be something we want to talk about.
Is it something you'd like to see them receive in advance of that workshop?
Yes, and I can send that out.
You know, I think one issue with having the meeting on October 10th is some of the boards won't have the chance to meet and discuss it ahead of that. So it feels like that's too soon, if you really want people from boards to come prepared to speak to it. And also, I kind of think if you invite all the members of all the boards, that's too many people to get anything done.
Well, I agree with you about the timeline, maybe for getting people here, but I think it's very important that the entire organization comes together, at least on a regular basis, and then maybe you break that, once you identify various goals, maybe you break that out into subcommittees or subgroups. But I do think it's important for any organization to come together as a unit periodically. And I saw this as that opportunity, so that we're all on the same page about what we're trying to do as a community.
Yeah, I think it would be good if we asked them for what major items they've worked on in the last year, and what are their goals that they've already adopted. If they haven't adopted any goals for the next year, then that'll be fine. Just to collect the information, looking at best practices with the idea that we can say, here's what this department did based on their major things. Here's what they're going to be doing for the next year. Can you now go back and try to do that? I think there's a value to have the entire committee here. It's going to be a lot, but it is a workshop. And I see this as not the only one, but just sort of a start one, and then see what's going on. I think it'd be good possibly to share those notes that Paula and I did for the meeting.
You took the notes, I took the form.
Okay.
So,
All right. So I think I may have forwarded those notes to you.
I think so. I'll have to
If not, just let me know. I still have it available. I think if we do this as, here's the first time that we've met since the last time, we have the new town manager, what are the various thoughts, and let's just ask them what things we can do. I think you're right, Phyllis, as far as asking them to set goals. No, that's not going to be, do they already have goals already set for the next year? That may actually be included in their budget. Maybe you could say, did your budget include goals for the next year?
and I think it's important we talk about our goals. I mean, that we outline what our goals are and how, increasing public participation and public communication. I mean, that's a big goal for us, and talking to them about their suggestions on how to do that, which was really the last workshop we did. But I think it's important they know what our goals are, and that if they have them, to relay those to us, and if not, to work on them.
So we'd want to send them our goals.
Yeah.
I would think so. I think we want to send them as much in advance as possible, so they get an idea of what they're walking into.
Yeah, I agree.
We could, as far as keeping in respect everyone's time limit, per committee, board, time limit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then have one designee from each of the board to be the speaker for that committee.
Yeah,
So,
I think that would be good. Both of those things would be good ideas.
Certainly when we're having, just general discussion, people can contribute, but to have one representative as the key person for each group would be important.
Do you want to consider changing the date to switch the workshop schedule around, or keep it on the 10th?
I think we can keep it on the 10th.
Because this is not the end. It's just sort of the beginning discussion.
Okay.
Great. And then economic development, next steps.
So I was going to bring this up under action file, but since this is on economic development, I want to know what our next steps are and what our plan is, and set a schedule on when we're going to meet, whether it be economic development as a broad topic, or whether it be the building reuse committee, which may be a separate issue, but I think we need to determine what that schedule is going to be and make it available so that we can get participation, because without having a set schedule, it's really tough.
I talked to Jamie, Chairman Toll, about this, about doing the November workshop as the next step in economic development, do a follow-up like we discussed last time. And
When in November is that? Do you know?
November 14th would be the second meeting in November. But, and that's the reason why it's on the agenda as well, is to discuss who, the stakeholders that would be invited to that meeting, what do we want to accomplish, at that meeting in advance. So it's-
Well, personally, and I think I said this at the last workshop, I think they are tied. I think the building reuse and the economic development are linked. Certainly, there can be different aspects, but I think that they're both critical to each other. And, you know, we talked about scheduling charrettes, and we talked about getting public information and doing a survey, and, you know, if that's what we truly want, then we have to come up with a schedule, and not just, you know, every other month kind of come up with it, but in my opinion, put together a calendar of how often we're going to talk about this, so people can plan their lives accordingly. Because I think it's very tough for us to sit on a Tuesday night and say, okay, November 14th, but then not know when the next one is, or not know. You know, maybe we talk about that at the workshop on the 14th, but I really would like to see a plan on how we're going to attack these issues.
And I would say that I don't want to tie economic development just to the building reuse.
Not just to.
I think the building reuse is a component, because to think that that's our economic development target, I think it
Right.
shortens it too much.
I completely agree, and I think economic development is much broader than that. But I also want to know where we are with the building reuse, because we talked about getting public involvement and getting public input, but the months are going by, and there's certainly a lot of interest in the townspeople on this subject, and I think we have a responsibility to identify what our plan is and to reach out and let people know what our plan is for just getting public involvement.
Well, and we also had some to-dos, which most of them fell with Heather and the DPW director, so I'm assuming that will be coming out when that information is gathered, so.
Which I have a report on some of the items for later.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to talk about at the building reuse workshop, as well as the economic development workshop, is I did some looking at grant opportunities, and there are a multitude of them for a variety of different things, whether it be farmers markets, whether it be artist collaboratives, whether it be green space, whether it be, you know, rehabilitation of old buildings. I mean, I identified numerous and identified communities. Bolton, for example, which was talked about what they were doing, they received a $96,000 grant to do that green space.
So that could be part of the workshop, which talks about how do we fund the proposed economic development.
Right,
so.
and you know, I have a whole spreadsheet of different opportunities that I want to talk about as well, but we have to come up with a plan first.
Right.
And we also have to have a sense of
What we're doing.
and what do people want for economic development.
So-
I appreciated when Bob went through at the last meeting, the historical information on, you know, Lunenburg fought 190 coming through, you know, and the town has taken some deliberate steps which got us where we are now, you know. So where does the town want to go from here?
Right.
Because I think we're flying blind until
I
we have a
agree.
better sense of that.
I agree. And so that's why I'd like to, you know, when we have the workshop on 11/14, I'd really like to set a goal of how we're going to get that public involvement and when we're going to do it
So that'll be one of our tasks on that
on
day.
that day.
Yep.
As far as stakeholders, the ones off the top of my head would be the Water District Commissioners, the Sewer Commissioners, Conservation, Parks Commission. I would actually include the IT Director, because I think he'll have a key role in the town's piece of information, getting that out on the website and everything,
Planning.
and planning. Are there any other boards or committees, groups that you?
So it would be good if we can have anybody from the business community. We talked about that. I mean, whether we get somebody from the
Chamber of Commerce?
Chamber of Commerce, yep. At least to see if there's anybody here. Okay,
Okay.
good. So we'll see if we can come up with the agenda prior to the 14th, so we can have another chance to look at that beforehand.
And I don't know if they will end up being a major stakeholder, but there certainly was interest from the Agricultural Commission. Personally, I hope they will be, but that's.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next item, disturbances of newly paved roads policy fee schedule, which we asked the DPW director to come up with his recommendation.
Hello, board members, Mrs. Lemieux. For the sake of people at home that may have missed it, the board did vote, I believe, on the 5-year moratorium. Did you vote to accept that? Or did
Yes.
You did,
Yes.
correct. I know you
Based
did.
on the
You just
5-year.
looked at me as if you didn't do. I remember at the end, but you voted on it contingent, or voted on it, period, and you'd like me to present for your discussion a fee schedule. So I've brought a recommendation to you. I kind of struggled with this a bit, but ended up pretty much black and white with my thinking the function of the fee itself. And the function of the fee, as I understand it, as we put fees out there in my department, is to cover the administrative work and cover the field work in the form of inspections. Because this is a 5-year moratorium, but with exemption, I would like that people don't see fees as a deterrent or a burden or some way to keep people from cutting into the road. I mean, as such, we have the exemptions, and there's a very clear protocol as to what's needed to be done and when it's needed to be done and how you're supposed to do it. And even before that, an appeal protocol that runs from me to the town manager, to you, the board, if necessary. So I looked at what is likely to be, and just as an aside, there have been less than a handful of requests once the road is paved, over time, anyway. So, not that we should not be prepared, because we will be, but just to give you some history of what has occurred. So when we think, as I brought up before, what is likely and which would be under hardship exemption would be the replacing of a water service. People need water. Or the replacement of a gas service in the roadway. And those really are the only two utilities. There could also, perhaps in a few of the newer developments, be underground electric as well. So that's what we would be looking at. So we would, on the minimum, we would look at a cut from the house to the curb line, through the curb line to the midpoint, which would, if the utility was on that side of the home, or curb to curb if it was on the other side. People would already have to take out a road opening permit, which is $100, and a trench permit, which is required by the state, at $40. So my recommendation for the exemption permit, if you will, would be $50. And that's because, of the hardship component. People are already in a jam there. We're not trying to make it more difficult for them. In a service like that, it would take, minimal inspections and minimal administrative work. And in all fairness to the public, we'd like not to be making money on fees. Now, that would extend, that $50, in my estimation, would extend for single-family homes as well. And remember, these houses, like when we talk A&R lots, say a road...
I guess I'm confused, because that doesn't
Excuse me?
appear on this sheet.
What does it?
The $50,
thing.
yeah,
So
it doesn't.
where's that come from?
The lateral was $100.
Okay, now, there's been a glitch here. I asked you today if they had received anything.
Yep, and this the last I got from you.
Okay.
It says
so-
$100.
Okay, this,
Sorry.
if you take this and just flip this right over.
Okay,
That right
Okay,
okay.
Okay. Miscommunication.
Sorry. okay,
So-
sorry.
Okay. I thought that you hadn't been sent that.
This just came today.
Okay. Nobody's busier than she is, so. So it's as you can see, I have struggled with it, because I've gone back and forth with the with the amounts and whether this much of a development or a small home service, and finally came up with this fee schedule, which I'm presenting to you tonight. And that would be $50. Now,
So
For
is
everything,
that the
regardless
lateral-
of the size?
Because there's 3 things on this piece of paper, and there's 3 different charges, so we're trying to figure out what the $50 charge is
now,
for.
did I ask you to just turn that over?
All right.
Okay? Because if you continue to try to match what I'm saying to you with that, it's not going to jive. I was under the impression that you were not given this draft. Okay, this was my draft given to the town manager for review. It was not intended to go to the board at this point.
Okay, so
Until-
for $50, you got what? I'm trying to
For
understand.
$50, you have a trench cut into the roadway to perhaps repair, for instance, water service or gas service.
Okay,
Simple trench cut.
okay.
Doesn't
It may
half
go,
the road,
it may
a whole
go
road?
across the road, it may go halfway across the road, depending upon which side of the road the utilities are on.
Okay.
That could be curb to curb, it could go mid-length. These are all explained in the exemptions, if you remember. For that, I propose we charge $50. Now, you can, believe me, I'm not going to stand here tonight and argue, in a kind way, argue about the rates. I'm going to make a recommendation. It's the board's,
So why don't you just give us...
Okay, yeah, just give us the recommendation.
okay,
Yeah.
I just,
What are
before
the
we get into
Yep.
that, okay?
Just give us the-
$50 per household, per home, per cut. So if you had, say, 3 A&R lots in a road that had been paved in less than 5 years, it wouldn't be a hardship, but nevertheless, for each cut, it would be $50 per house lot. They would also have to, have the road opening fee and the trench permit per house lot, too.
And what are those?
Road opening permit is $100, and a
fee.
trench permit is $40.
And the what?
Trench permit?
fee.
So right now, we're only talking about fees for the newly paved road policy. But
Correct.
he was letting us know what the other...
Correct. This is what the person, if a person comes and says, for whatever reason, be it a hardship or all those things that were mentioned in the exemptions, come for a single permit to do this. You have to have the road opening permit, you need the trench permit, and now this new permit that we've discussed and upon which you voted, that I recommend would be $50.
So if I wanted to do this at my house, pay $100 for road opening, $100 for the trench.
No.
If I need
$40.
$40 for the trench, and if I needed 3 cuts, that would be 50 plus 50 plus 50 on top of that.
But it's per household, he said,
Not
so you
exactly.
pay $50.
So, a household would never need more than 1 cut?
It's per lot,
No,
so,
but wait a minute, no, that's... So, cut for water, cut for electric, cut for sewer?
Yes.
oh, okay.
We anticipate in the appeal process that the only folks that will be coming to you will be those that need the cut. Otherwise, it's a 5-year moratorium.
Right.
It's
But
not,
So is it $50 per cut, or is it $50
Per household, you said 2 different things. What-
$50 per household.
Okay.
So regardless of how many cuts, it's $50, so it's not per cut.
Because see, then, if there's one beside another, then that's taken up in the repair process, explained in the repair process.
So it would be $190.
So we're not, we can always find an example. This would be an example of a new home. Is it likely that a person would, suddenly their gas would suddenly go off and their water would suddenly go off? It may happen, but unlikely to happen. In the case that it's a new house, an A&R lot on a newly paved road, and people say, I'd like to build this, comes through the appeal process, we have it in place in case it's necessary.
What if
Are
it's,
there any other charges beyond the $50 per house? Is there any additional fee?
That I propose? No.
So we have to understand that what we approved was this is a fee for the permit. The property owner will still have to restore the road to the
To the original
whatever in there.
standards,
So that's a
right.
different expense. We're only
Right.
talking about the permit fee.
And a much greater expense, I might add.
Right.
So that was part of my thinking as I moved along this process.
Is there
The function of the permit is an educational process, in a sense, because you educate the homeowner on how the new repair needs to be done and/or the contractor, and then you inspect it to make sure it's done as by the protocol.
And you can do that for $50. The town
Yes.
isn't going to spend any
Yes.
extra money.
Right.
Okay. So
Per
it's a-
home,
so
per
it's-
business?
Yeah, what if,
If
yeah.
there's a business, is there still?
I'm going by the cut in the road more than what it's coming to. So, as with the tax rate, same across the board. I don't think, in my mind, that if it's a business and they run out of water, it's a restaurant, let's say, or they have a gas interruption and they need to put gas in, I don't think because there's a business, it doesn't seem correct to charge them extra money just because they're a business. They're still under hardship, they're still trying to make a living.
So-
And
And
it
it's
doesn't
one-
cost the town anymore.
And that's right, it's
So
one
the
trench cut.
$50 per
lot?
requested,
It's really per lot, right? Because if it's a business, it's still a lot. If it's a household, it's still a lot. So if you said lot, it covers everything, right?
per lot, will that work for you?
Sure.
What if it's a development? What if it's 250 homes? Is it still just $50?
Well, so this is where we kind of fold over into the longitudinal. Say, for instance, let me use a perfect example, Reservoir Road. I think everybody's probably familiar with those new homes that are along Reservoir Road and the individual cuts. Say the road had already been paved for the sake of discussion. We would charge each individual
Lot.
home, each individual lot, this fee. Now, say the owner of the backland wishes to cut into their road and do the same thing for the backland, but it's only one connection. My recommendation is it's still one connection. There are other things in place in the town, I'm sure, fees that need to be paid, plans that need to be reviewed, tax money that we'll get in the future. It's not my position, I don't believe, to look at those things, but only to permit the road repair and to make sure that the road repair is done correctly.
So part of what we need to do is be able to be clear for anyone coming through is that instead of per lot, we're looking for a fee per transaction. So I'm trying to figure out what's the right wording. So if you have a subdivision coming in that needs to connect to a road that was just paved, it's not going to be per lot, it's not going to be per house, it's almost per connection type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a more articulate way to put it,
So we're gonna look
but
at
it's
how
per
to word
cut.
that.
It's per excavation into the road, per
Yeah,
cut.
Per disruption of
Yeah.
the road.
I would suggest, I think generally this is okay. I would
Yes.
suggest that you and Heather work to come up
The
with
wording.
The legalese.
legalese, that type
Sure.
of thing, whether it's
And
lot,
as
house.
long as the town's expenses are covered.
Right, I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
that's why it's
Yeah.
a permit fee versus the cost to do. They're still going to have to pay that. I think if you just work on making sure that we've covered all the different options.
So the minimum would be $190, right? 'Cause
Right, for-
the
per-
current
Those-
Per house lot.
We're not involved in those
Yeah,
anyways.
yeah, but I'm just saying that
What it's going to cost, yeah.
Right.
it would be road opening, trench permit, and
Person comes in, have a hardship or otherwise need a utility service, and we look at that and discuss it with the town manager, even though that's a second level of appeal. This is what I'd like to do. She's on board with it. This is the fee to do that.
yeah, as long as the town's
And then
costs are covered.
the town's not, not on the hook. I think anything more, like with the first page, I was thinking more of, the value, and that's not really the way to institute a
It really
fee.
does go to your cost of
Right.
your inspection time.
Absolutely.
So the question becomes is that if you have a subdivision coming in and it is going to go down the road for half a mile, they're going to have to pay for all of that. Is there any more work that you would be involved with for that inspection? more than the $50?
Well, if it were a sewer tie-in, water, of course, is out of our area of control. Drainage, it's not likely. Yeah, there would be inspections. We do go out and inspect every so often, but the difference in, as it is in the project or past the right-of-way, is that by bylaw, we have no responsibility for that.
Talking about under the paved road, if the road where they need to get to is a long distance, will there be added work on your part to get to that point? Not there's the subdivision coming down and the road's coming right in front, the water line's right there, and they just have to tie that.
Mhm.
But if they actually are going to go up the road a half mile
Mhm.
and dig up the entire half mile of the road to get there, is there more work on your part, is what we would want.
Sure,
to do.
and that's why I was going to start with the lateral cut, and I was going to move to that longitudinal cut.
Okay, so all the fees we just talked about are for lateral cuts.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
so longitudinal cuts.
I understood you to mean, once it's past the right-of-way, is there more work
Yeah,
inspecting the trench? There may be, but it's not germane to this
Yeah, no,
fee.
I'm only
Okay.
talking about a
All right.
half mile under.
Longitude-
Under a newly paved road. So now we're into a longitudinal cut.
Yeah.
And I've doubled that to $100.
Okay.
And the reason is because the administrative fee, which is minimal, frankly, and it'll allow for more inspections.
So the total cost for that would be 240, because the 100 and the 40 still stay the same,
Mhm.
and then the $100, so that would
Correct.
be 240.
Correct.
So a lateral cut is 190.
Well, and what we're only doing for tonight, because those other fees are already in place.
Is the 100 and the 50. I'm just
Right.
trying to figure out the total.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out the total.
Which, there was in my mind trying to be reasonable.
Yeah.
And when you go further, that's the longitudinal cut, taking it down the road.
Yep.
Now, at some point, let's use another example that we had in the past. The Lunenburg Water District brought from a new well on Leominster Shirley Road up Leominster Shirley Road, down Reservoir Road to Page. Well, Reservoir Road was in terrible shape, but Leominster Shirley Road had been milled and overlaid, I think, 2 years previous. Now, that's a longitudinal cut. That was something where we may charge them the 100, but they are, with the protocol, need to overlay curb to curb. So that's where the expense is. The expense is not in the fee. The expense is in the repair method.
But if you have a longitudinal cut that's, a mile long,
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
aren't there more town costs for inspection?
Well,
We just have to cover the town's cost.
yeah, in a case like that, there are reviewing engineers that are hired, they're peer engineers first, that are on, I hate to keep using the water district, but would be on the owner of the new line to review it at first. Then there would likely be inspections by the designing engineer.
Yeah, but isn't the town going to inspect to make sure they're doing
The
what they say they're doing?
inspection by the designing engineer is covered in the contract. And yes, but it wouldn't be a day-to-day-to-day.
So we
Operation.
effectively outsource that inspection to.
Yeah, it's outsourced at the
engineer.
price of the owner, the installer, not the contractor, but the installer. So if the water district or whoever was going to bring that water line a mile or more. And then, then you get involved in other boards in town as well. And there are other, which cover, so I'm not there every day. And at times, even in large projects, speaking of fees, the town waives the fees. We waived fees in the sewer projects. We've waived fees for.
But let's not go
some-
into.
Yeah, let's
just
not-
come up
let's
with
just-
Okay.
yeah.
fees.
Well, so that we're covered. I mean, we have the fee schedule. So that'd be the fee schedule.
So-
The lateral cuts would be 50. To reduce it to its simplest, the lateral cuts for this, 50 per house lot or per home, and for the longitudinal cuts, $100.
But doesn't the town have to inspect the work?
Yes.
You know, you're telling the person that's doing the work, yeah, you have to get it inspected by your guy, but don't we have to have a guy in there to saying,
So that's, this lateral cut is the 50. The question becomes, if it's a really long, we're having a
Exactly.
reviewing engineer and a designing engineer doing the inspection.
Do-
And we've approved who that person is
On a large project.
on the large project. As part of our previously approved process, we already said, if we have to have somebody do it, the property owner has to pay for that. So we don't have to have a fee for that, because that direct cost they have to pay for, and we get to approve that.
Right. Should there be somebody there from the town? Absolutely. Is there somebody there from the town? Absolutely. And on a near daily basis, or if it's critical, at long periods of time during the day?
so doesn't that cost money?
Yes.
So should we increase the fee?
I think you should increase my pay.
We're trying to have it.
Cover the town's
The
expenses.
fee is trying to recover the cost.
I know, I just thought I'd add a little levity. I mean,
So the
listen.
answer is no?
The answer is, the answer is that there is somebody there, I am there, in the town's best interest. There's a history of that with the sewer, there in the town's best interest.
So
With the-
but that
with
costs
the-
money, that's what I'm saying.
It's covered under his salary, I
It's
think.
covered under my salary.
But you are allowed to charge fees to recover the costs of the person to do that. And the question becomes, what, if you think about the water line for the water department, assume that Reservoir Road was fully paved before they dug it up, and Pay Street was fully, paved before they dug it up. What should we be charging for a permit fee of your time to inspect
On a
versus
daily
the
basis.
inspection, the designing inspector?
Well, again, I do believe that in those larger projects, there's a design.
Yeah.
And in every project where there's a designing engineer, there is almost always a field inspector to make sure that the project, whatever it is constructed per design. And that's on the installer's time.
Right, but if you're the,
And they would be reporting to you.
Yes.
but if you're there every day, which I thought you just said, then there is a cost associated with that.
Right.
Yeah, it's paid for through my salary.
But we get to recover it.
You get to recover it to the general fund.
Right, but that's
But
recovering
That's
it.
what we're trying to do here,
Yeah.
not trying to increase the cost of a project. We're trying to make sure that if somebody's coming in to do something, they're going to pay for this part, and they're going to pay for us to supervise and inspect it. Not supervise it, but to inspect it.
So it sounds like you want to leave a caveat there.
If it's a large project, we have the right to charge a higher fee.
Yeah, so I think there's some legal language there that needs to be discovered.
So what I'm going to suggest, and I think this was a good discussion, because what I'd like you to do is to see, do other towns have the fees for these inspections that we could look to? What are those inspection fees? Not the reviewing engineer or the inspection, that type of thing, but the supervision of them. Does anybody have fees?
I think you'd find in our neighbors in Fitchburg and Leominster that they have an individual that does that, simply an inspector. I think you'd find that was quite high, considerably higher than what I'm proposing here. I'm not so sure of the Townsend, the Grottons thing, but I could certainly look at that.
I think that'd be good, because I think, $100 for a longitudinal cut, I think that's a reasonable amount for a normal.
Something under 500 feet.
You know.
Why don't we do, some communities for various departments put a fee per inspection, and that $100 includes 2 inspections, but if you have to have more inspections, there's an additional inspection fee. So maybe we do that. Maybe this accommodates up to 2 inspections. Any inspections needed beyond that are charged at a rate of X.
Because the assumption is that if it's a
Yeah.
really long thing, they know it's going to cost more, therefore it's a reasonable fee to charge.
And they need to get it finished so that they don't keep racking up the fees.
And the money gets to be credited not to you, but to say the DPW is bringing in costs to cover its expenses.
Yeah.
Type of things. We'd like
But
to-
you agree, it goes to the general fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the
No,
same time...
I understand the concept.
Similar to other things that people charge, we get to say, all right, like the building department, those fees do not go to the building inspector, but if you say 50,000 comes in, what's it cost to run that department? There's
an offset.
Sure,
that type of
sure.
thing.
It's an offset.
This isn't going to happen very often, but I think it needs to be a reasonable thing that if you're going to end up being out there for a full week reviewing, there needs to be some sort of...
Yeah, I don't think it's, I think over the course...
$100 a week.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think it never has been all day, every day.
Right.
But it could be over the course of the entire week, or rather the course of the entire project, on perhaps a daily basis.
I mean, I'd be fine to say that, it's at $100, it covers 2 inspections, and then for every inspection beyond that, it's another $50.
Or whatever it should be,
whatever.
or $75, or whatever,
maybe
whatever it needs to be.
Maybe the town manager and I could,
Yeah.
with the help
Yeah.
of council, if need be,
Yeah.
could put that schedule together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
a lot.
you.
Thank you, Jack.
Request from the police chief for letter of support for traffic study performed by MRPC on West Townsend Road, Highland Street, and Main Street.
You have a letter in your packet from the police chief, and I've prepared a letter of support. I can let...
So the letter of support would state to Glenn Eaton, Executive Director from MRPC, this letter to express the support of the Board of Selectmen to perform a truck traffic study for West Townsend Road, Highland Street, and Main Street in Lunenburg. Attached, you'll find a letter from the Police Chief, James Marino, outlining the request and purpose of the conduct and study of these roads. The study would be used to determine the volume of commercial trucks with carrying capacity over 2.5 tons traveling on these roads that would lead to the establishment of a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion zones. The police chief noted that he sent a letter to Heather. In the past, the police department had to field numerous complaints from residents of West Townsend Road, Highland Street, Main Street, Leominster Road, and Lancaster Ave with respect to heavy commercial vehicle traffic. Increased heavy vehicle traffic, extreme noise and vibration, excessive speed, danger to children, and severely damaged roads are just some of the complaints brought forth by residents of those streets. They have to be reviewed and evaluated by the Mass Department of Transportation. They have to be determined as suitable alternate route with effective width and pavement structure, which can safely accommodate additional truck traffic. In this case, the alternate routes lies partially in the adjacent community towns in Massachusetts, but only on a state highway, which would be Route 119, meeting the requirement for truck exclusions. So they have to do a 24-hour consecutive count, physical characteristics of excluded routes, types of buildings, so there's a lot of work. He also stated, although I believe that heavy commercial vehicle truck traffic is far in excess of 8% on Leominster Road and Lancaster Ave, he does not believe those streets would meet the Department of Transportation criteria for truck exclusion. So we may have to come back to look at that, but he does believe that West Townsend Road, Highland Street, and Main Street will, and therefore propose for a study. So we'd be looking for a vote to authorize sending MRPC to do the study.
Oh, I have a question about that. When you exclude those streets from commercial vehicle traffic, do you have any say over where they go instead, or does it just
Yeah,
pile it all?
you have to provide alternative, that's part of the study, where would they go?
Okay.
And it probably would be Route 2A and Chase Road, other things like that, so on that part.
That would be in the study.
And that'd be in the study, yep.
And just for people to know that there are sort of exclusions don't apply if they're going to or from places upon those streets for making deliveries or materials or merchandise or doing work. So it doesn't mean that you can't have something done on your property.
It's effectively through
Through
traffic.
traffic, right. So I would make a motion to approve and send a letter of support for a study of heavy commercial vehicle exclusion zones.
Is there-
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's also just noteworthy, a follow-up from one of our previous meetings about the traffic rules and orders. I got in touch with Mass DOT about the process for that, and there really is none. Legislation changed in 1986, maybe the last time we updated those rules and orders. And it only, the heavy commercial truck exclusion needs to go through Mass DOT as well as speed limit changes, but
our
not
rules
the
and regs
traffic.
don't.
It can be posted on our website. I'm gonna send him a copy just so they have one on file at Mass DOT as well. That's
Great. Committee reports.
Action
I'm
file
sorry.
issues.
Oh, action
if
file.
you-
Thank you.
I wanted to just comment, because I had received some notice from the chairman of the planning board, that this board hasn't provided any input on the pilot for the solar system. I know that we're waiting on that, and we have an appointment scheduled. Apparently, the town council is providing an opinion to the planning board at their public hearing next Monday, and the chair of the planning board has indicated that a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen would be helpful. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I know we're waiting on the pilot, and when is that meeting set up for?
October 3rd at 6:30.
October 3rd. And I don't know if,
Hi, Greg Bittner, 129 Pleasant Street. I'm also the chair of planning. So I did reach out to the town manager, and I did get a very descriptive and accurate account of where we are to date. There has been discussion from us and from your board as to whether or not we could make a condition that the pilot be conditioned on approval with the applicant's permission or endorsement of that. As an individual member, I'd like to see that happen just for the benefit of the town, but if this is something that's kind of under your umbrella, so it's up to you. I'm not here to advocate either way, but if you care to make a recommendation regarding that to the planning board, we're happy to consider it, so.
So, I mean, this is not our agenda item, but I certainly have no problem with the planning board taking whatever authority it has to do that's legal. And if the property owner wants to voluntarily include that as a required condition, then that doesn't affect what we do with our process, and that's not interfering one way or the other, so.
Okay.
we can't make a vote because it's not specifically on our agenda, but I certainly would support the planning board seeking agreement from the property owner to enter into a pilot.
Okay, yeah, just because of the timeline, our next meeting is the 25th, and this is your last meeting
Right,
prior to that.
right,
So,
right.
And I do have a appointment to meet with town council prior to our meeting, so
I certainly think,
discuss it with him and do it in a tactful way and
I certainly think we can, you're hearing now, I mean, and certainly we can send a memorandum over to Adam Burney that we're meeting on October 3rd with the purpose of discussing a pilot. So I think the planning board can take that into consideration, and you can take back, and Phyllis hasn't spoken yet, but I think the two of us are and the three of us are in agreement that we would like to see the planning board incorporate that.
Okay, yeah, I'll present that to them. and-
No, I wouldn't say that we would like them to, but they are authorized
They
to
are
do whatever
okay.
their power is to do anyways.
Right,
We're not directing them.
right. We're not
because they're-
directing you because we can't.
And I guess the
You're an
question for
elected
Heather
board.
would be, is that on our meeting on the 3rd, will we have a proposed pilot agreement to review?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and again, the timeline might be extended depending on how our next meeting goes, so I'm not sure, but due to the timeline that this is your last meeting prior to us having our public hearing. So, all right, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other action items?
Nope.
One thing, at our September 5th meeting, Dave Rogers came up during public comment and really was interested in 24/7 coverage from public safety. And I think that would be appropriate to add as an agenda item in the future. And hopefully, people who are also interested in this topic might attend that meeting. I think it's worth.
So I recognize your position on that. I would say that that's really part of the budgeting process.
the same thing.
And that we don't want to pull specific things out other than to say, Heather, please pay attention and then come back to this information. Because I think if we start holding budget hearings on any different thing, then we're going to upset that process, because
I guess as a concept more than as authorizing you to go forward.
This comes up every year in the budget discussion about the need for additional public safety and the need for hours. And if you remember, last year we talked about it extensively, and we were able to increase some hours in the lobby and, in the fire department. And I think it's something we look at every year, and I would agree with Mr. Ebersol. It needs to be part of the budget discussion, because it is part of the overall budget.
And we did increase the number of police officers last year, too. So.
Right. So we are trying to add, to work towards that, and I certainly think it's something that our public safety officials as well as our town manager look at every year.
Okay.
Committee reports, Mrs. Luck.
The school committee's meeting tomorrow night. The Stormwater Task Force is meeting on the 28th.
Mrs. Bertram.
The MPO meeting scheduled for this month is canceled, so the next meeting will be in October. Conservation Commission met on September 6th, and just a couple things of interest. The town beach came in looking for permission to put some sand on the beach, and it was allowed with the condition that any sand going on in the water will be put back during low periods. So basically, Conservation doesn't want you to keep filling in the wetland. They want you to pull that sand out and put it back on the shore. There were several hearings that were continued, one because of abutters notices weren't submitted, one for clarification on drawing, actually a couple for clarification on drawings. The solar plan that we just talked about was continued for further engineering because they want to look at the impacts to the buffer zone on the clearing and the potential moving of portions of the project outside of the buffer zone.
My only update is the Charter Commission will be meeting Wednesday, September 27th. We had a successful first meeting where all members were available and participated, which was a great way to start the meeting process. We actually are going to be meeting at the Ritter and not here the way we thought to. The way we set up our meeting, it turns out we conflict with the Zoning Board of Appeals, but we're going to work with the PAC to see if we can get it recorded so it can be televised. We've committed to making sure that we make that as public a process as possible. That's it. Town manager report.
Okay. I have a number of things to report on tonight. Follow up from a previous meeting. The Summer Street TIP project was advertised. It's on the Mass DOT website. So it was advertised on August 19th for construction bids.
And Chase Road was advertised as well, right? And do we have those bids in yet, or are we still waiting for them?
I have not been notified that,
Okay.
and it would be,
Okay.
I think,
To DOT?
it would be on the website too if
Okay.
those bids had been.
Okay,
received.
okay.
E-permitting, as a follow-up to a question that was posed about whether a technology fee can be imposed on building permits. The building commissioner, Gary Rhodes, and land use director, Adam Burney, confirmed that we can in fact place a technology fee. And 780 CMR section 109.2 refers individuals to the municipality for the fees owed prior to the issuance of building permits. DLTA Business Town Partnership Grant. I keep wanting to repeat this to make sure that people are aware about this process going forward, and we're ready to do a kickoff meeting. So just to go into that a little more, we discussed this at the Economic Development Workshop, and Adam Burney and I have been working with MRPC to discuss the scope of services that they'll be providing the town and the businesses. This grant will provide consulting services to host workshops with the business community, as well as workshops with residents to hear their ideas about fostering business development. Besides the workshops, the grant will include performing a preliminary market analysis, identifying gaps of service in town, and articulating a vision that can be carried out by the business group once this project with MRPC is complete. On the town side, this will likely include putting a business section on our website that identifies all the businesses in town, events that will draw people to town, and other means of promoting local businesses. Letters will be mailed this week to approximately 420 businesses to invite them to this kickoff meeting, which is Monday, October 2nd at 9:30 in this meeting room. And it will be advertised in our town buildings. It is already up on the website and has been sent to the Ledger. The first meeting will focus on gathering information from business owners, but there will be future workshops where we can hear from the public and more interactive meetings with business owners and the public.
Great.
We received notification last week that we were awarded a $5,000 Department of Energy Resources Technical Assistance Grant.
Yay.
Yay. And this grant will provide consulting services from MRPC, which will be focused on grant administration. So they'll help us prepare for the competitive round of Green Communities grant. And also the annual report that's submitted to DOER, which is very time consuming. And Facilities Director John Londa has done that for the past grant. The Green Communities Task Force has tentatively set up a meeting for Wednesday, October 4th to discuss the next steps. The Town Hall mold abatement and air ventilation projects. We did air samples on the first and second floor of this building just to confirm that there were no mold spores, and it came back that there were no elevated mold spores on those floors, which is a positive sign. And there's one additional mold spore air sample test to be scheduled for the basement to confirm that all the mold was abated in the basement. The next phase of the project began last week, where a ventilation engineer came out to do testing on the air exchange system, and we'll be contracting with an HVAC contractor to clean the air ducts from all the dust buildup in the
And do we have a
system.
cost on that?
That is approximately $3,000.
$3,000?
Mhm. It's included in your packet that I'll be going over
Okay.
in a bit. Once that's complete, the ventilation engineer will return and he'll do a balancing of the air exchange system. The last phases include cleaning the records that are currently being stored in the trailer that were removed from the basement that we would expect would have mold on them, so we're not going to put them in an area that would contaminate any other records or space. And we would also be sealing the areas around the foundation of this building so no moisture in the future can get into the basement. And that is a to be determined cost for both of those things. Records retention space. The Worcester County Sheriff's Office will be able to assist us with moving records from the attic over to the designated room at TC Passios. And this will likely occur in the next month or so, and will provide staff time to go up to the attic to mark off boxes that we can just write a letter to the Secretary of State for destruction.
So the attic, meaning above this ceiling?
Yes.
I didn't realize we were putting records
Oh,
up
there's a
there.
ton up there.
I didn't realize, I thought it
There's
was
a
just in the
lot.
storage room.
Pictures for future meetings.
Yeah, that was many years ago that there were a lot, so I can't imagine what's up there now.
Significant. The Worcester County Sheriff's Office is also helping us with some other projects. We asked them to do some work over at the Teen Center, painting.
The Boys and Girls Club?
Yes, the Boys and Girls Club. And they were supposed to begin this week. Due to the weather, we're going to be postponing and moving those dates around. They were shifted over to Marshall Park to do some cleanup over there. But they're going to be limited to painting over there, just strictly the porch area and the fire escape, due to limitations with ladders and lifting equipment. And just to let everyone know, the hours that they would be at the Boys and Girls Club would be 8:30 to 1:30, so it's outside of the hours of operation. Town Hall painting project, the invitation to bid is available and will be due Wednesday, October 11th at noon, and they'll be advertised. It's advertised accordingly to procurement law. And this will also be placed on the town website. The T-Mobile communications lease and use and occupancy license, an update on that. The Attorney Costa is waiting for a response from T-Mobile. He has been in contact with them, so as soon as he receives word back, we can proceed with the use and occupancy license in the interim of getting a town meeting vote to extend the lease term and going out to bid after that. The Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch Center, just an update on what's going on at the center. The previous executive director of the center resigned in June, and the administration board appointed an interim director that same day. She was an employee within the center, the lead dispatcher, the lead supervisor of the center. So since June, the administration board and the operations board has been meeting bi-weekly to discuss outstanding issues, the hiring plan for the director's position, and taking the appropriate action. 3 administration board members, including myself, conducted the initial interviews and recommended 2 finalists to the full administration board. And the finalists interviews were conducted 2 weeks ago. And the interview panel recommended Mr. Ross Clun for the position, which was ratified by the administration board at their last meeting on September 13th. Myself and 2 other members of the administration board will be negotiating a contract with Mr. Clun. So we hope that he can start within the next couple weeks to, with appropriate notice to his current employer. Just a reminder that Town Council has office hours on Monday, September 25th from 4 to 7 p.m. If anyone has not signed up and would like to visit with Town Council, I believe there's still available slots left. And he'll be attending the planning board meeting that evening as well. Special town meeting, just this will be a agenda item for a next meeting, but just wanted to put that out there that we will be having a special town meeting. The projected date or proposed date is November 27th, the Monday after Thanksgiving. And that
Can it be the Monday before Thanksgiving? Or, it just seems like a lot of people go away over Thanksgiving. Seems like a tough time to have
It is the
them.
most traveled holiday.
But they quite often take that week of Thanksgiving as opposed to the week after.
So could we bring it up 2 weeks? I mean, it just seems like we have a hard enough time getting people at town meeting without picking a time when most people go away.
You wouldn't be able to move it earlier because of deadlines, so it'd have to go into December.
And that would be too late for the assessors for tax bills.
It just seems like you're
Could we
just
do
looking
it
to
on
have nobody there.
I think, can we do it on a Tuesday instead of a Monday? Could we do it on because a lot of people
28th.
take an extra day and come home that Monday? Could we
I
look at
can
maybe doing the
look at,
28th and do it on a Tuesday instead of a Monday?
I checked preliminarily with the town moderator, the town clerk, and everyone. They were all available. I can see if they're available on the 28th.
I'm just
as
thinking,
well.
I know myself, we'll leave Wednesday and come home Monday.
Right. Like you say, it's the most traveled
Yeah.
time of the year.
And that's all I had for, that part of my report. I have a town facilities update that is in your packet as well. So since the August 15th meeting, there were a number of items that required follow-up, and I'll address each in as much detail as I have at this moment in time. The board had asked if the school had a strategic plan for the school buildings. After speaking with Superintendent Collins, she confirmed that the school committee does not intend to utilize the TC Passios, the Brooks House, or the old primary school for future school building space. The vote by the school committee to give these buildings to the town and the town meeting approval are evidence that the school does not intend to request these buildings to be used for future schools. The TAPE study space needs did include superintendent's offices, but did not include all the district's central offices, IT offices, and special programs like school-linked services or the ACE program that are currently housed between TC Passios and the Brooks House.
Does it need to?
So I'll get to that.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Capital costs for Turkey Hill. The facilities director, John Londa, presented a capital plan at the last 2 school committee meetings that include a replacement of the roof at Turkey Hill and major renovations to extend the life of Turkey Hill. That would include such things as window replacement and HVAC upgrades. That Mr. Londa estimates to cost approximately $4 million for the major repairs and $1 million for the roof replacement. The Turkey Hill roof was put on around 1998 and given a typical life expectancy of 25 years, is identified for replacement in fiscal '24 for the $1 million. And that is a MSBA eligible project, which the reimbursement is usually around 50%, 53%. And this would push the other project, because you can only apply for MSBA reimbursement every 10 years, to fiscal '34 for the major renovations.
Okay, so the major renovations, the $4 million, is that going to is the long-term plan for Turkey Hill to just keep extending the life? Is that $4 million in 10 years going to extend it? Do we have an expectation of how long?
I think that probably deserves a discussion where we bring in the school committee and Mr. Londa.
I think that's important.
Yeah, my understanding was that the building was in good enough shape that was going to be the case, but I would be asking the question not, I believe that the building is structurally sound and with this money would keep it. The question I would ask for the school is whether programmatically
it's going to work.
It's going to work. That was what we went through with the high school, is the lower ceiling site, the handicapped accessibility, other things like that. I still think
the high school was also a wreck.
Right, well, no, but that's what I was saying. But the Turkey Hill Elementary School is in better shape.
Right.
Was built differently, but we
does
still
it
need
have-
to programmatically, we need to have.
Right,
that
does it
discussion.
have the ability to meet the curriculum needs, and for how long? And because when we talk about building reuse, this is a big part of the question.
Yeah, I mean, if they can reuse that building even for $10 million, we're much better off.
Than building a new school.
Yes, because then you're left with
So
another
really, it's the
vacant
long-term
building.
plan. It's beyond the 10 years. What's the long-term plan? What's the long-term life expectancy of that building for use as a school?
I do, having conversations with Mr. Londa, know that the asbestos abatement will help achieve things in the long run for them as far as access to the HVAC system above, because without, doing that work, they wouldn't be able to get that access. So that will be able to chip away at other capital projects for that Turkey Hill.
But I think Bob's point is very important, is the ability of the building to support the curriculum, which the high school, although structurally it wasn't in the best shape, it was no longer able to support the curriculum requirements.
It was also just a mess.
It was, but it couldn't support the curriculum either.
The space needs study was updated, which is attached in your packet. The TAPE space needs assessment, we've included all the original figures from the TAPE and the offices that were included at that point. But as it was updated, it was identified that there were certain spaces that were not included, such as especially the school district offices that I identified. And that is on the third page of that space needs study. So they're currently using about 8,213 square feet at the TC Passios, with a real need for about 3,570. It's because the classrooms aren't, people are placed in areas that could be designed differently and utilized in a more efficient way. So the end result was
Can you go back just for a second? I'm still confused.
So they have 8213 for the current square footage.
Where are you?
That's the middle.
Yeah,
But
okay,
they only need 3570
okay.
because they're in rooms that are just bigger, or they're needed, or they're going to be
Okay.
located somewhere else.
But they weren't, that 3570, a significant portion of that was not included in
Correct.
the TAPE, in the previous TAPE study?
Right.
Okay.
The previous TAPE study, I believe it was 655 square feet.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a big difference.
Wow, so it's going from 655 square feet to 3,570.
Correct, because it only identified the superintendent's offices.
It didn't look at all
It
the,
didn't
okay.
include
Okay.
all the other
Okay.
offices over there. So if we do not consolidate office space, the school administration offices, special program spaces, and IT offices will still require space. The 2015 Lunenburg Public Schools capital plan designated approximately $15,000 to update space at Turkey Hill for district central offices. So depending on where, how we proceed, or the school proceeds with location of those offices, whether it's going to be under a consolidated office space over at TCP or renovating space at the Turkey Hill Elementary School. That will determine those space needs.
So they have the space at Turkey Hill?
Yes, it would need to be renovated.
What's it used for now?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's empty right now. And
Can we find that out? Because I'm very curious, because being very familiar with the building, having, my granddaughter there and doing Girl Scouts there, I'm really curious where that space is.
And it goes to whether it should be there versus programmatically, or whether it makes sense to be
Exactly.
part of a consolidated.
Right.
So if they were to be in our building, in a consolidated town office building, what does that do for space?
it brings the total needed square footage up to 28,560 with that 1.5% factor. The original TAP-A study figure was 19,695.
And there is that much space at TCP, right? There is
Correct.
sufficient
There's-
space.
Double that.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing the work to get that updated. I think that it's another data point as we figure out where,
What to do.
where things should be programmatically.
Another item the board asked me to look into was a comprehensive assessment of the buildings. So the DPW director and I have met with two firms so far that will be providing proposals to do a comprehensive building condition assessment. And they will do that for the town hall, the TC Passios, the Brooks House, the Ritter Building, and the old primary school. What the final product would look like would be an objective look at our current condition of these buildings, what projects are considered priority to maintain the integrity of the building, and what the estimated cost for those projects would be. Their team would include mechanical, environmental, structural, electrical, plumbing, and building envelope specialists. And they would assess each building and make sure it's structurally sound as well. There's a cost to perform these services, so we're waiting for that figure to proceed, and we should have that within 2 weeks. And I have attached some preliminary figures for the town hall. And
Where did those come from?
there was a study, I think it was McKenzie Engineering.
Years ago, right?
Yes. And those, actually fiscal 13, that's when the study was done. So I took,
Okay.
starting with the 25,000 to repair the columns and footings in the basement,
Uh-huh.
and did an escalator of 5% for each fiscal
Okay.
year. And that's what fiscal 19 represents.
Okay, so the fiscal 19 is the figures that are identified in fiscal 13 with an escalator for
Yes.
fiscal 19. And what's the percentage?
5% each year.
Okay.
So those are estimates. I'm not saying they're completely accurate. I think
Yeah,
doing
but
a
it's-
building.
But you updated
But
the
yeah,
estimates.
yeah,
point.
it's, right, and I think it's important.
And so there's, up above that, there's the work, the numbers that are in there are the work that's been done so far on the town hall, including the bird waste removal, the mold remediation in the basement. We'll need an estimate for cleaning the files that were removed from the basement, the dehumidifier that was put in the basement, the cost to do the balancing of the air system, cleaning the air ducts, and sealing the stone foundation from gaps in moisture, and the painting of the town hall.
So without those three predetermined, to be determined, we've spent 160,000.
Correct.
160,650.
Yep, that includes the painting, which actually is slightly less than that in the capital plan, but I just rounded it up.
So we didn't do any work in the fiscal 13, any of the work that's moved over into fiscal 19. We didn't do any of that work.
No.
Okay. And the things that say to be determined in fiscal 19, that's what this comprehensive study hopefully will identify?
Yes, those are the things that I thought should be included. Window replacement, possible. Maybe they'll have another alternative to replacing the windows.
Okay.
But right now, because the building has shifted so much, you can't open the windows. If you look over at the door, there's a gap, and that's from the building shifting so much as well. So there's a number of things. The roof, looking at the lifetime span of the roof when that needs to be done. The fire escape, because you should maintain that it's kept up to standards. The metal doors, the alarm system. Right now we can't utilize that appropriately because of the doors. And putting in a gutter system, that was one of the recommendations, to make sure that water gets away from the foundation.
Right.
Except once you put a gutter system in, you gotta clean them.
Unless you put some of the
Guards.
on it, yeah.
Even if you put guards on it, I know I have to clean my guards. So,
Clean the guards.
That's the maintenance of it.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I have for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Keeping my work on that.
I had one question on the e-permitting. What do we do with that information?
In what regard?
Are we gonna place a technology fee on building permit?
That's the plan, to cover the cost of the service.
So when will that service and fee be put in place?
The project is expected to probably launch in early spring, I would say. So between, I put a placeholder article for the special town meeting to do a revolving fund for technology fee.
Didn't you have one more item under the town hall update? The architectural design services?
Facilities.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. The RFP process for architectural design services, you had inquired about what the procedure would be. And what I expect would have to happen would be the designer selection procedures need to be updated. The last time that was done was in 2005.
What is that?
That's a required part of selecting a designer. There's needs to be, and you do have them, but they're just out of date.
So can we put that on an agenda in the?
Yes.
Is that something we do or something you do? As
I
procurement
am
officer?
part of the process of selecting the designer, but you have to approve the procedures.
Okay.
So, because it's a policy and
Right,
procedure.
Okay, yep.
And then I'll be soliciting an estimate from an architect just to have a estimated amount to perform those services, so we can go to town meeting with a figure. And then once we receive approval at town meeting, an RFP would be solicited for architectural design services.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, any public comment from the public?
Hi, it's Katie Adams from Williams Drive, and I just wanted to make a couple comments, and one is in regards to the discussion of looking into the future of Turkey Hill. And one thing that comes into my mind is not just the structural needs, but if we have space needs from a student perspective. I know that at the new middle high school, new hired teachers are currently on carts, and that there was maybe a locker shortage in the high school end. So as we continue to develop residentially, if we are projecting more students, a future school project might also have to address increase student population, and a rebuild of Turkey Hill or whatever happens to Turkey Hill might be that time where we also have to identify a growth in student population. And I see if maybe we renovate Turkey Hill as an option at needing an addition, and or that could be a time where rebuild the sixth grade, seventh grade have to be pulled out of the high school because it's max capacity. So that's just one thing that pops into my mind when I think about 15 years from now, because I know they're already a little bit full in the brand-new middle high school from a couple different perspectives.
If I can, I just would suggest that as part of the middle high school building, they looked at that. And I don't know if you recall, but I had issues with the population projections, continue to have issues with the population projections. However, the MSBA determines that. And so that I believe, and you can check, but I believe that we have that information for
Sure,
the
I'm
grade
just talking
levels.
about
Yeah.
actual things right now that new
Yeah,
hired
yeah,
teachers don't
yeah,
get classrooms.
yeah,
That's just
yeah,
a fact. I'm not trying to go retroactively
Yeah.
back and debate anything.
But
But
that's
I'm
not
just
what I was
saying
doing.
that we have an opportunity as a town in like 15 to 20 years, not just to say this is our last school that's in poor condition, how do we address that, but what other advantages will that opportunity give us from the school's perspective? And I think increased population growth will definitely be a part of it, where we currently have a lot of large-scale things on the books that will continue to increase students. So I just like that to be a part of it, not just its actual structure, because I don't think any of our schools can accommodate, they constantly add teachers to make classroom sizes smaller, but that will always need more classrooms, just historically speaking. So that's just one thing. And then I wanted to comment on square footage in the TAPE in terms of our overall space needs for office when we talk about consolidation and whatnot. And I just wanted to, I feel like I might have written it down wrong, so I just wanted to ask what we currently are looking for, the current total that you just addressed, given the new 655 square feet.
It's not new 655.
No, the newly discovered.
Okay, but it's not new 655. It
The
went
newly
from-
discovered
Okay, can I
space
just-
that we weren't accommodating for, there was a new total.
Have Heather answer the question.
Thank you.
So the original TAPE study didn't take into account all the school's district central offices and some IT offices and programs that they ran over there, like ACE.
No, I know those, and I agree. I just wanted to know the new
Going
total.
into what that
Yeah.
number, why it increased. So
I feel like I wrote down 28.
Can she answer the question,
1,000.
please?
yeah. So the original total was 19,695,
95.
and the new total with those new figures in is 28,560.
And it went from 655 for the school to 3,570. The new number is not 655. The old number was 655. The new number is now 3,570.
So we added 3,570 to 19 and got 28.
We added 30, well, we revised all the numbers all the way through the entire sheet.
So 19,695 plus, what was the new?
19,000 was the number before. We're now at 28,000.
Where'd the 11, I
So
mean, that's
but we
over
have,
10,000 square
we
feet.
can give you the list of all the various people. It's not one item
No,
that
I
changed.
understand, but it's 19,695 was what it was, and then the new figure we added to it was,
We changed several numbers.
no,
in
the
it.
one we just did, the 6.
The new total you're asking for is 28,560.
The new figure, that was the 6 number, the increased needs for the school, that was 3,570, and
It
then
No,
was 600,
no.
it's now
It
3,750.
was 655.
So it went up 3150.
so that plus the 19,000 doesn't
But
equal 28.
But that's correct. We're not going to give you a mathematical number. We can give you the full chart because there were several different numbers for all different departments that changed from the 19,000. We're not going to get into the mathematical.
Okay, but that, I'm just confused. I'm just trying to
That's what
be
I'm saying, is
interested
we
and
can give you
follow
a copy of the
So then I'll
public
just
record.
complete my public comment by saying the actual total from the TAPE study was that the current space needs was for 13,130 square feet, and where we got the 19,695 square feet was a gross area adjustment of 1.5, and that was just a factor for future growth. So we already had put into the square footage figures over, approximately 7,000 square feet of extra growth space. So the total in the TAPE for square footage is 13,130 square feet. That was what we currently need. And even when you examine how they arrived to the 13,130 square feet number, there's some things given square footage in that particular study to reach that number that don't actually currently used square footage. So I guess my public comment is just to suggest that we are constantly really continuing to inflate our space needs square footage, and I think that's at a tremendous cost operationally if we do indeed have space in Turkey Hill to accommodate what the school is looking for. From a maintenance and utilities perspective, I think it's much less expensive for the town to accommodate space needs where the space may indeed already exist, and to be cautious of not inflating space needs in such a way that will have future operational costs of maintaining space that is not possible, is underutilized. But I really, not here to be argumentative, just factual, and the true total in the TAP Hay study is 13,130 square feet was what they came up with. And so if we're adding numbers, I really suggest we go back and add it to that, because we're adding to something that had a gross area adjustment of a factor of 1.5. So I really feel like we're continuing to look for more space than we need, and that's at a long-term cost to the town. I think we have to look at what we have and how to use it in a way that doesn't create a burden of carrying more square footage than we need. Also, if you compare these space needs to other communities' office space needs, other communities that have twice the population use less square footage office space than this. So I'm just struggling with this number, and the numbers presented tonight don't add up, and I'm not meant to be, I'm factual, I'm not argumentative, I'm just trying to understand it, and I think myself and then anybody else who's following any of this really deserves numbers that add up together. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Public comment from the board?
Nope.
I would just note, as a public comment regarding space calculations, there is a space based on an office, and then the factor that is applied to deal with space needed for boiler room, for circulation, for other space like that. So I think when it's important that we actually look at the space needs for a particular office. The factor may be higher based on a traditional calculation, maybe a different. Damon's proposed process with open format shares some of that space, so we can certainly look at that. Some of that part is an important part to verify that these are the space we need, make sure we're not missing anything. Whether that's a growth factor or whether that's current number, we'd want to look at that, because I think it's the current usage that we have for need. And I would think that part of that would be part of the design process that would be done with the experts coming in versus the informal survey that we've done so far.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and just as from a factual standpoint, there is a spreadsheet that is available that identifies the current square footage, the projected square footage, and it does add up, and I would recommend that people take a look at it.
Where, is it on the website?
No, it's just available. I'm sure you can get a copy from the Selectmen's office.
Any other comment from the board? Not, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 9:20.